Tony Hawk.
Everybody, how are you? I just want to take a moment to say what a huge contribution Rodney Mullen has made to skateboarding. If you guys are familiar with the trick, the kickflip, which I'm sure you are, Rodney created that 30 plus years ago, and it was so beyond our comprehension that we didn't understand how he flipped his board, so we called it the magic flip. It's true. It was the original name for the kickflip, and then now probably your kids are doing them. But he's the godfather, so much respect to Rodney Mullen. My name is Tony Hawk. I'm 50 years old. I'm a professional skateboarder, and that might sound like an intro to some sort of support group, which it kind of is. I'm still in recovery from a lot of injuries. And I guess I can give you a brief synopsis of how I got to be here. I started skating with friends in my neighborhood. Like you said, my older brother gave me one of his hand-me-down skateboards, mostly just so I could join the crew. And we would skate to different people's houses. Sometimes people would build a little ramp in their alleyway, and we would try to skate that. And I didn't think it was something monumental or life-changing for me until one day I got invited to go to a skate park by a friend of mine. And I went to the skate park locally in San Diego, and most skate parks then were empty swimming pools that was all inspired by the Dogtown crew. And I went there and I literally saw people flying out of these empty swimming pools, and I thought, that's it, I want to do that, I want to fly. And I pretty quickly quit all the other sports I was involved with, including Little League. When my dad was appointed president of the league, that was the year I quit. That was an awkward conversation. But to his credit, he finished his duties there. And I just went full board, spent every waking moment outside of school at the skate park. About 4 knocked out teeth later, a couple concussions, I finally figured out how to do these aerials that I saw these older guys doing. But I learned a different technique. I learned, because I was so small, I couldn't use my bulk to propel myself in the air. I learned how to ollie into my aerials, which meant that I was actually like doing an ollie and using my feet to get the board in the air, then grabbing it later. And as a kid, I didn't think that it was any sort of evolutionary move. I just was doing it out of pure desperation, because that's the only way I could figure out how to get any height. People labeled me as a cheater because they said, well, that Tony Hawk, he ollies into all of his areas, so it doesn't matter how he grabs it. And I was like, yeah, exactly. That's the idea. And so it was very isolating, because skateboarding at the time was sort of dying in popularity. And so I found myself in this new world of a very small community that was already considered not cool by sort of all my friends and mainstream sports. And then suddenly I'm in this world that I fall in love with, and I'm considered an outcast in that outcast activity because of my style of doing it. It was very discouraging, to say the least. But at the same time, I found some friends that were sort of in the same mindset and of the same body type as me, and we just forged ahead because we loved it too much to listen to the haters. I think that really did set me up for the thread of my life, because as things progressed, I eventually found my style, I found my confidence. I started winning some events. In the 80s, we had a run of success that Rodney and I shared on the Bones Brigade. He and I were dominating the competitions then, and it felt like we were rock stars. It felt like there was no end in sight. I was 17 years old, senior in high school. I bought a house. That was very difficult to stay focused on schoolwork my senior year, because when your friend's parents are out of town, that's the party house. My parents were never in town. My house was always the party house. I finished high school barely. No, I did okay. It was mostly because I was absent going on these trips. And then suddenly the bottom fell out of skateboarding, and we were riding high in terms of what we thought was success. And suddenly I found myself with 2 mortgages, a child on the way, and my income diving by half literally every month, because my income was based on royalties. And so things were not selling. And that's what I've learned over the years, is that people don't call you a sellout until your stuff actually sells. And suddenly I found myself, like, the sky was falling. I didn't really know what to do. And the smartest thing that I could think of to do was to start my own skate company. Because skating was in a lull, but at the same time, it felt like the right thing to do, because I knew that to get established as a skate company would be the lowest cost of entry at that time, because we could get one of the best teams for relatively little money. No one was getting any salaries at the time, so I put together what I thought was a A-list team, and we just started promoting the brand. I took out a second mortgage on my house to cover it. Eventually had to sell that for what I owed on it, and scaled back very much so on all expenses. I've been famously known now, if you know anything about me, that I was on a Taco Bell $5 a day diet for about 3 years. Taco Bell and Top Ramen. But you know, I like the crunchy tacos. I'm not complaining. And so, and we just did it because we loved doing it. We loved that we were creating this new brand, that we had complete control over it. I didn't have to listen to anybody. Sales were a struggle, but they were there just enough to keep us in business. And I was known as a vert skater, which is, you know, the big ramps. That whole scene was dead. So if you're a vert skater, you're a dinosaur. Forget it. So I was trying to usher in a new team that was mostly street, mostly people just trying to emulate Rodney. Couldn't get Rodney, so I got the next best thing, maybe. So then, fast forward to 1995, ESPN decides they're going to do this experimental event called the Extreme Games, and they just throw anything at the wall. They put together the strangest sports, things that I didn't know anything about or really care about, to be honest, including bungee jumping, rock climbing, sky surfing, but there was also skateboarding and BMX. And I realized that although it seemed cheesy, if we had a venue, if we could reach the right audience, I felt like there's something more to skateboarding that people weren't realizing at the time, where it was a very healthy, positive activity for kids. It taught a lot about self-confidence. It was just as athletic as anything else that they were doing, and took just as much perseverance and dedication. And so I felt like we could sort of outshine these other sports if it were just shown as we really are. And it took a few years, but things started getting on track, and the X Games took off. Birdhouse started to actually be profitable. Birdhouse is my skate company. And suddenly it was like the dream was coming true. And I don't even like to say that we were living a dream, because we were literally creating the dream. There was no template, there was no roadmap for what we were doing. We were just trying to make it work. And not long after that, I got an opportunity to work on a video game, which it's a funny story. I went to Activision, and they said, we are going to do a skate game. We would love for you to work on it with us. And I was a video game freak. I spent many hours in the arcade at the skate park when I wasn't skating. And I said I would love to work on one. And so I went up and met with them. I went to a conference room. They had a bunch of their suits sitting around PlayStation. I walk in dressed like a skater. I don't know if this is dressed like a skater. It doesn't look like this. And I picked up the PlayStation, and on the screen was Bruce Willis on a skateboard, because they had just done a video game called Apocalypse that was a massive failure for them. But it starred Bruce Willis, and the engine that they were using was perfect for a skate game. That was the whole idea. So I pick up the controls, and it's Bruce Willis with a gun strapped to his back, skating through a wasteland, doing kickflips. And there was something instinctual. I just knew that this was it. This was the engine. This was the control scheme. This is what is going to make skateboarders want to buy a PlayStation. And that was the goal for me. That was really the line of success. Was that I'm gonna have skaters want to play video games, or this game anyway. That was it. I knew that we were onto something when, about a month before the release, Activision called me and said, we want to talk about maybe buying you out of future royalties if this game is coming out. I said, what does that mean? So we're willing to offer you $500,000 for any future royalties. And I said, and at that time in my life, no one had ever spoken the words $500,000 to me. It sounded like someone saying a gazillion trillion dollars. I was actually doing pretty well with Birdhouse, with competition earnings and endorsements. And I said, you know what, I'd rather just see what happens. I'd rather, kind of ride this out. It was by far the best financial decision of my life. The video game changed everything for me. It gave me a huge opportunity. It promoted skateboarding on a bigger scale than I ever imagined. It allowed me to start a foundation for public skate parks, and it allowed me to stop competing, which was a huge benefit to me in terms of family life, family time, and also just focusing on the way I want to skate. And I guess the lesson I can give you there is just you got to keep doing what you love doing, because that is the dream. It's not about the financial success. It's about doing what you enjoy, and that will bring you the happiness. To this day, I would ride my skateboard for free any day of the week. I get paid ridiculous amounts of money now to ride my skateboard, which just still feels absurd to me. I get paid ridiculous amounts of money to talk about skateboarding. And is that the dream? Sure, I'm living in it, and I'm just thankful. So thanks for having me, and thanks for watching.